Hey guys, welcome to the Bourbon and College podcast. I'm Austin. Let's get started. So today's topic is a little bit about bourbon hunting. And I just want to talk about this because this is a big scary thing. At least it was for me when I was starting out. How am I going to hunt bourbon and, have to fight other very experienced people to get the best bourbons? Or how am I going to spend more than $100 on a bottle of bourbon? That seemed crazy to me at the time. It still does money-wise, but the hunting, I feel a little more confident about now. So basically, I wanted to share how I learned to bourbon hunt. Although I'm not the most successful person at it, I think it's a good way to get started. Also, I was going to talk about how to do it on a budget. So basically, if you don't know, bourbon hunting is going out to liquor stores in general to find special bottles, whether they be rare or just limited release, expensive. The biggest examples that come to mind are the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection or like the Pappies, neither of which I've had the luxury to have yet. For me, it even includes Blanton's. I cannot find it. I cannot get a hand on it other than at a bar. A lot of people, especially more experienced bourbon hunters, think Blanton's, that's stupid. But for me, that's something I'm on the hunt for. So I was in Kenner this weekend for a robotics tournament. Yes, I know I'm a nerd. But I went bourbon hunting while I was there. Found some really cool bottles. Didn't find what I was looking for, but I found some really cool bottles. I went there looking for Blanton's specifically, or if not Blanton's, at least something that I've never seen around here in Baton Rouge. And there were some interesting things for sure, but not what I came for. Although I did have a lead. That being said, I'll go into more details on my story as I talk about the different tips and tricks bourbon hunting. First things first, have a plan. Figure out what you're looking for. Maybe you know something's coming in soon at a store, or maybe you just really want something. I have a hierarchical. I made a list, and it's in order of. It's a list of bourbons I want, and it's order of how bad I want them. So I brought that. I made a plan. I knew how much money I was able to spend, and how much I was gonna spend. So I budgeted enough to buy the best bourbon on my list, but I wasn't going to spend the same amount of money whether or not I got that bourbon or not. I would drop that money on the bourbon I really wanted. If Blanton's was up to $100, which I know is crazy, but I am desperate, I would buy it. That being said, I wasn't going to spend $100 on a different bottle if they didn't have Blanton's. I told myself I'm not going to spend more than $50 on a backup bottle. I knew what bottles I was looking for, but I wasn't going to spend more than $50 on the backup bottle. Unless it was the Blanton's I was looking for, then I would spend that $100. So just plan out what you want, plan out how much you want to spend on it. That's the basic tips for any just bottle hunting in general. That being said, if it's hard to find, it's going to be hard to find everywhere. Now, Blanton's is a little different because it is a little more common in other places. So I kind of had a hope maybe they'd have it. But the best way to get those rare, unique bottles is to first build a relationship with the stores you're hunting at. If you go in there just asking, hey, what's your best stuff? They're not just going to hand it to any guy willy-nilly on the street. They're going to hand it to their loyal customers first. Unless they just have a bunch hanging around for some reason. So, that being said, find a good store near you. Spend time there. Buy your everyday bottles. Go buy your Buffalo Trace there, every 2 weeks or however often you drink it. Buy your interesting bottles, their store picks. Try them out. Get to know somebody. And they'll not only sell you the rare stuff when they get it, they might even tell you when it's coming in. They might call you up, hey, there's something interesting here you might want to try. things like that. And I'm working on that here. I'm still young into it. It takes time. The store I went to in Kenner, one of them, this guy, he was great. I gave him my card. He gave me his card. He said he'd call me if he ever gets a shipment in. Went there a few times. Struck up a friendship, I believe. I think it could work out great. It's a shout out to Ricky's Discount Liquor in Kenner. It's on Williams Boulevard. Check it out if you're over there. The guy's great. He'll help you out. And they have a huge selection for it, not just bourbon. They have a huge selection of whiskeys, wines, beer. They have a beer cave. Anything you can need over there. It's not a sponsorship. That was just, I really like that store. Check it out. I always shout out Calandros. That's my go-to store in Baton Rouge for sure. The guys over there are great and helpful. Now everyone knows it's a great store, so I'm working my way to be the loyal customer in their eyes and the guy who gets the call when something comes in. But I still love Calandros regardless. And then more on the budgeting side of this, we'll talk about a bourbon budget in general later, but make sure when you're budgeting for, your expense, your life, or just budgeting for bourbon in general, have a savings fund, if you will, for the expensive bottles. That way, it'll be there ready when you see an expensive bottle. You can buy it and not feel bad. You don't have to, move around money real quick. See, can I get this bottle? Things like that, and just don't touch it until you see that bottle. That being said, it's bourbon, it's whiskey. It's not gold, it's not land, it could be an investment, but don't break the bank on it just because you want to get that rare bottle. It is what it is. It doesn't matter how rare it is, it's still just alcohol. It's still just a consumable. I'm a big proponent of, if you get a whiskey, drink it. It's not there to sit on the shelf unopened. Now, that being said, if it's for a special occasion like a birthday bourbon you save for your child's birthday and you're saving for your 25th, that's a great reason to keep it close. I'm talking about buying a bourbon with the intent of reselling it later for a higher price. I mean, yeah, if you see two rare things, you want to grab them both and then drink one and maybe use one for a trade or something, or to share with people, sure, that's fine. But I'm just not a huge fan of people who just buy a bourbon to resell it later, or even buy it for the rarity of it and just don't touch it. The reason it's rare is the person who made it took the time and effort to make it amazing in their opinion, so they didn't make much of it. They want you to try it. I want you to try it. Heck, share some with me. That being said, it's always going off a little tangent here, but it's important to remember the important things in life. If you ever find yourself with bourbon, alcohol, anything that's consuming your life, even if it's not alcoholism, it's you're being consumed by the hunt, the thrill of the hunt, the collection, and you're spending way too much money on it, you need to step back and think about it, what's important in life. Bourbon's important. It's not that important. All right, so more about my story. I went to the store looking for Blanton's. First day, they said they're getting a shipment in. They said maybe there'll be some in there, no promises. Went in there after the shipment came in, no Blanton's, but they had a couple things. First day, I grabbed some Maker's Mark Cask strength, which I've seen around in stores here. It's definitely not that rare, but when I was looking for it, I could not find it, so it was exciting to see that. So I picked that up. Next day, after they said the shipment should have been in, no Blanton's, but they had a John J. Bowman single barrel, which I had not seen. I've seen John J. Bowman, but I have not seen the single barrel around here. I hadn't been looking for it necessarily, but again, couldn't find it. So I picked that up instead. Told the guy, I'm not just looking for one thing. I'm looking for good bourbon. He said some people think it tastes like Blanton's depending on the barrel. Again, I've only had Blanton's a few times and only in a bar, so I couldn't confirm that. I'll give it a full review later, hopefully with some Blanton's that could side by side it. But anyway, I bought some bottles from him. I talked to him. He listens to the show now. He followed my Instagram. I followed his Instagram. I'm on his list to call if he ever gets some Blantons in. That's great. He's awesome dude. Awesome dude. Loves bourbon too. The guy I talked to, he was a bourbon guy. They had other guys in there who knew their beer, knew their wine for sure. But this guy was a bourbon guy. And we became fast friends, I believe. So, from that, I call that trip a success. No, I didn't find what I was looking for, but I got 2 really cool bottles. And I made a connection. That's what bourbon hunting's all about. That's what bourbon's all about, in my opinion, the connections you make. Yeah, it's delicious, but if you're not sharing it with somebody, sharing what you love with other people, then what's the point? So I made a connection. I shared that bottle around a campfire later that night, so I made more connections there. It was a great weekend. It was awesome. I highly suggest, if you're ever out of town, slip into some liquor stores. You never know who you'll find there. You never know what you'll learn from the people, what they might have in store, or just making a connection for later if you ever come back. But the reason I was looking for that Maker's Mark Cask Strength and I was so excited about it, like I said earlier, I had never had any of the Pappy products, but there's a common recipe online for a quote-unquote poor man's Pappy, which is a certain ratio of Weller Antique 107 and Weller 12, neither of which I've ever had either. So, I found a recipe for poorer man's Pappy. This recipe is 2/3 Maker's Mark Cask Strength and 1/3 Larceny Wheated Bourbon. I like Maker's Mark. I really love Larceny. Never had the Cask Strength Maker's Mark, so that one's a little new to me. But I batched this. I made about 200 milliliters worth of this poorer man's Pappy, and I'm going to try it on the show today. I have no Pappy to compare it to, so I don't know how accurate it is, but we're just going to see if I like it and taste it. I'm going to do a full review on that, but also I'm going to be reviewing just the Cask Strength makers on the show as well for the show's review. But so I go online and look at the Breaking Bourbon website. It's got some cool articles, great reviews, but they have a tasting sheet out that I'm going to start using just to keep everything consistent. I'm going to keep my own rating system because they have a number rating system. I'm going to keep my own rating system for an overall, but I'm going to use this number rating system for myself in the future. But anyway, it just it has a list of colors with examples. It has a list of contrasted flavors like youthful, refined, rich, bland, blah 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 blah, and some common descriptions that I'm going to try to use. So, alright, without further ado, I'm going to try the poorer man's Pappy and then the Maker's Mark Cask Strength. So on the nose, this poorer man's Pappy, it's got a rich nose. It is very complex. I was not expecting this out of the nose. I get strong oak, but not over oak. Strong in the sense of it's a dominant characteristic. Definitely get some cinnamon and your classic caramel for sure. But strong oak and even some dark fruit like some cherry, some stone fruits. Very interesting nose. Maybe even a little bit of raisin. I'm kind of hooked already, honestly. I get a little bit of nuttiness, but like Larceny is super nutty. This one is not that nutty. Oh man, on the flavor. That oak is still there. Definitely get the caramel vanilla of a bourbon. It is sweet, but the nuttiness starts to shine through, which, as you know, I love. It's sweet, but short. The finish is, the oak is lingering, but it cleans up well. It's very succinct. Like I said, the oak lingers a little bit in a pleasant way. Everything else just kind of stops, which I actually like that. It's not a bad short finish. It's a good clean finish. It's definitely got the cherry and the dark fruits on the flavor as well. The cinnamon shines through. Like I said, it's like a cinnamon peanut butter or cinnamon butter almost with an oak and I get coffee. Definitely get some coffee. Let's see one more time. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Larceny is my favorite weeder up until this point. But that is complex and that is different. Again, I don't know what Pappy tastes like. But that's definitely better than just Larceny by itself. I'm about to compare it to Maker's Mark Cask Strength by itself to give that a fair shot, but that is great. I guess it's a higher proof because the Cask Strength Maker's is 110. Larceny's at, I believe 50 or less, in the 40s somewhere. So it's kind of a higher low proof, and I think that really lifts it above the Larceny. Gives it the complexity. Man, I'm impressed by that. That's a keep. I'm gonna blend some more of that. Now I blended this about an hour ago, so it had a little time to meld and mend, but not the longest time. So I'm gonna see how this goes tomorrow. Try it again tomorrow. See if I get anything different on it. If not, I might finish off my current Larceny bottle to make a big batch of it. That's really good. Definitely a keep. Alright, so let's do the official review of the show. Something we can all get. Although you can all make that poor man's Pappy at home. Something we can all get is the Maker's Mark Cask Strength. So this Maker's Cask Strength is 110.9 proof. That's 55.45 ABV. Now that looks handwritten, but it also could be print. So I don't know if that's what they keep it at every time they bottle it, or that's just this barrel of it. Because it has a batch number and the makers of it, and some other information like that. It's the same mash bill as regular Maker's Mark. I'm pretty sure it's aged the same way in the same warehouses. They rotate their barrels at their rick house, which is kind of interesting. Makers is interesting. They have coming out some interesting things. They got their classics, and they got some really weird, interesting things going on. Right away on the nose of this, not near as complex as that poor man's Pappy. Adding that Larceny really gives it a complexity. It's got more of the fruit side of things, that dark fruit that I was tasting. A little bit of oak on it. I get some honey and fruit on the nose. That's what I get. A little bit of spice, like a cinnamon spice. But mainly the fruit, not as complex. It's interesting. It's definitely more complex than regular Makers, but it's not as impressive as the poor man's Pappy so far. Let's see what the taste has. Yeah, on the taste, I get a little nuttiness, not as much as poor man's Pappy. A little nuttiness. Definitely get that dark fruit and oak. Vanilla is pretty strong in this, more so than even most bourbons, I'd say. And the finish is oak. It's oak and vanilla. It's classic Makers on the finish. And it lasted pretty long. I don't know where that clean cutness of the other one came from, because Larceny's got a okay finish as well, if I recall correctly. I don't know what the combination of the two does to make it different, but those are two very, very different sips. Maker's Cask Strength, it's a keep. I would keep it over Makers, honestly. Anything you use Makers for, you use the Cask Strength instead. Just kick it up a notch. It's good, but it's not as good as it is as blending with Larceny. Heck, if you're going to keep it around, just keep it around for mixing as well. It's good, not great, but good enough to keep. Alright, y'all, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time with some new interesting topics. I got some great interviews coming down the hatch. It's going to be a fun time, y'all. See y'all later. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Bourbon in College podcast. If you like the show, give it a 5-star review on your favorite podcast directory. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/bourbonincollege, where you can pledge as little as $1 a month and get access to our patron exclusive podcast feed where I do special episodes every week. If you pledge $5 a month, you will get a 3D printed custom Bourbon in College coaster and Glencairn top. And if you pledge $20 a month, you get to be interviewed on the podcast. Find me on Instagram at bourbon_n_college. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Bourbon in College. Go to bourbonincollege.com to see where you can find me. All the podcast channels are there. My YouTube channel is on there. All my social media, the Patreon page. So that's your one-stop shop for everything. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.